everybody, this is Michael Gatewood, and I've got Illustrator opened up. I've got an 8.5 by 11 artboard, and I'm going to start talking with you about drawing simple shapes and putting them together so that your stuff looks a little cleaner, a little crisper, your clip art looks good. First thing that we want to do is just go into Illustrator and more than likely go down to the View drop down. Let's get over here to Show Grid, right over here. So let's pull that back out so it can give you a headache. Show Grid, and now we have a grid to be able to help us with our artwork. If we need to change this, we can go into our preferences and change it. Next thing I'm going to do is simply go in here and throw in a stroke and a red fill. The first thing we're going to draw is a heart, a very simple heart. The tool of choice is going to be the pen tool. And let's go in here and let's click on our grid. We're going to go back over here and we're going to click again, two big squares down. We click and we drag. Now one of the things we want to do is get the top part of this heart looking right, and that looks pretty good. That's hitting two squares up, and the tangent from the handlebar is right there in the center, so that's a good start. We'll go right down here to the bottom and we'll click again. That's half a heart. Now that's all we needed that grid for, so we can hide that grid. I don't like looking at them, it gives me a headache. The next thing I'm going to do is simply go over here to the selection tool and grab half a heart. Once we've done that, then we've got a little right click option. Right clicking, right on the object, let's go transform, reflect. Let's preview and copy, and now we have two halves of a heart. The one thing I see, one of the biggest mistakes in Illustrator, is that in Photoshop they immediately go to layers and they use layers, but really you should be using layers just like you do in Photoshop and Illustrator. We see that we have two halves to this object, this heart. Now what we want to do is simply go and click on one of the hearts and move it over. We're going to try to get that in a good position, and that looks pretty good. Excuse me. Now let's go in here and zoom in, and we're going to see that we don't have a connection. We also have two halves of a heart. We have a little V in our stroke here, so let's go in here with the direct select tool and grab those two anchor points. Let's right click and average. Let's make sure that those anchor points are dead on. We'll go with both, click OK, and then simply right click again and join. Once we've got that, we've got a connection to this heart. We've got one object at this point, or one shape. I'm coming up to the top to make sure that this stroke is just as pretty as the one at the bottom. So I've got that selected, right click, just for habit, average, both, then right click and join. Now we've got a great situation, but we're not finished. These strokes need to look good. Now one of the things that I see is that this has got a sharp point to it, and personally I think we need to go to our stroke, get into our drop downs, and let's cap the corners and the end caps to make sure that we've got a nice round edge on each one of these points for our heart. Looks good to me. Let's double click on the hand tool and we're out off of this object. Let's click on the direct select tool. Maybe this heart profile or looks a little too wide, but we've got a perfect heart at this point. Now the designer in me says, you know what, a perfect heart, that's too computer generated. Let's make it a little more interesting. Now that we have a perfect heart and that we can draw a perfect heart, let's go ahead and select it. Let's go right back over to our pen tool and let's add two anchor points. So I'm going to go to the add anchor point, and I'm simply going to click, and I've added an anchor point. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click, and I've added another anchor point. Let's go in here with the direct select tool. We'll click off of the object to make sure that we're getting right on the one anchor point that we've added. Now we've changed that a little bit. Now we'll go to the other anchor point. Maybe that'll come in, go up a little bit. Let's see if we've got something that looks interesting. Let's bring it down just a little and maybe keep that like that. Now we've got something a little more interesting, but we can go further. Let's direct select this object. Let's go in here and let's take a look at this stroke. Right now, again, it looks a little too perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to widen this stroke, and then I'm going to create a variable on this stroke, and I've got a width profile, and these can be customized. We'll go into that later. But right now, let's go and change that up so that we have some wide points and some narrow points on our stroke. Now what we have is we have a heart that we can make a little bit smaller and put that into one of our projects. Anything that might have to do with something that shows caring or whatever. But one thing we do have is we have the ability to create a perfect heart. Then we have the ability to go in there and edit that heart to give it the look and the feel that we would like in our brochures, catalogs, newsletters, logos, all that good stuff. My name's Michael Gatewood. Thank you for taking a look at this exercise, and we'll talk to you soon.